This video will show my three favorite technologies: Amazon AWS, GitLab pipelines, and the Node serverless library. So this video will show how you can deploy a serverless web API using the GitLab CI/CD workflow on top of Amazon AWS. So in this video, in this example, I'm keeping things really simple. This is what AWS looks like. We have two public subnets where our Lambda functions will run. We have an IAM role that our Lambda functions use. We have three S3 buckets. We have one bucket that is used to hold our configuration files for our environments. So this is what the configuration file looks like for staging. You can see we have the name of the file, and we have the security group ID that the Lambda functions will use, and we have the subnet IDs where the Lambda functions will run in. And this is where you would, if we had a database, this is where you would specify the host and the username and password and database connections. And if you had any other sensitive API keys, you would put all that sensitive information in this configuration file, and you would store that securely in an S3 bucket, keeping that out of the GitLab repository. And then we have the API gateway that we're using to host our web API. And at the bottom of all this is CloudFormation. So CloudFormation is the mechanism that is used to deploy all of these resources and do this very easily. So this is the development workflow that I like to use. There are three branches here. There's the dev branch, the staging branch, and the master branch. The dev branch is not associated with any sort of cloud environment. That is just a branch that developers use to check in code and branch off of. The stage branch actually represents the staging environment, and the master branch represents the production environment. So this shows the workflow that I'm going to demonstrate at the end of this video. We're going to branch off of the dev branch. We're going to create a branch called add trucks. We're going to merge that back into dev. Then we'll merge dev into stage. And when this merge happens right here, the GitLab pipeline will be instantiated. And in this case, it's really simple. We have two jobs in the GitLab pipeline. We have a deploy stage job and a test stage job. And so this will deploy to staging, and then if we had some code, we would actually we would run some code against the staging environment. And so while I was developing this, CloudFormation is the thing that really makes all of this magic work. And you can get into a situation where you might have to wait for CloudFormation to finish doing its thing. So in this example, I made some drastic changes to the AWS resources, and my CloudFormation stack was in a update complete cleanup in progress state. And so that meant I could not deploy, I couldn't make any changes, I couldn't deploy any code while the CloudFormation stack was in this state. I couldn't even delete the stack, I couldn't do anything. So I was sort of at the mercy of CloudFormation, and that can be a little bit of a sticking point if you really need to get code out right away, and you're just, but you can't because you're just waiting for CloudFormation to do its thing. Another tip here is that GitLab, your AWS CLI keys need to be stored in GitLab. There's a little section in GitLab in your repository, the GitLab settings CI/CD section. There's a place where you can put variables. So this is where you put your access keys and your secret key for your AWS account. So this is really important that you don't forget that. And one final tip here, the GitLab runner. So to install the GitLab runner on your box, I did it this way. I ran GitLab runner register. I used this URL. I used the token that they provided. I chose the shell option, and then I said GitLab runner start. And then after that, I was able to see my computer in the GitLab here. So Marty's runner on laptop. So I have a runner running on my computer. So overall, this is what all the components look like. we have GitLab up here. We have my computer. We have a GitLab runner that is running on my computer. AWS is up here in the top right, and Docker Hub is here at the bottom right. So the first thing that's going to happen is that I will push a branch to GitLab, my add trucks branch, and then I will merge add trucks into dev, and then I will merge dev into staging. And when that happens, the GitLab runner on my computer detects that change and downloads a YAML file from GitLab. And this contains the steps, all of the necessary steps to deploy this stuff into staging. So the first thing that it's going to do is pull the latest node image from Docker Hub, and we're going to install the serverless framework on there, and then we'll install the AWS CLI, and then we will copy our configuration files from our S3 bucket, and then we'll deploy to staging. So this shows that we're going to get our node image from Docker Hub. We get our image, we install serverless and the Amazon CLI library. We get our configuration files from the SLS configuration bucket. We copy them down. Then we tell serverless to deploy this stuff. So serverless creates CloudFormation templates and uploads those templates to the proper bucket. So in this case, it's going to store that configuration file, CloudFormation template file in the SLS stage bucket, and then serverless will instruct CloudFormation to pull those template files and deploy all of the resources in AWS. And at that point, we're reaching the end. It cleans up, and we're done. The node image goes away. So let's see this in action. Okay, this is our project. So I'm going to quickly go over this project. So at the top here, we have our configuration directory, and there is an empty configuration file here that represents the schema of the configuration file stored in S3. So like I said before, we're not storing any configuration files in the repository. This is sort of a template that shows us what is stored in S3. And the actual configuration file will get dropped in this directory, and serverless knows to grab data out of that file right here using these instructions here. So this is the serverless YAML in its entirety. We have just two endpoints. This is our new truck endpoint that we've added, and this is our implementation in its entirety, and this is the new truck implementation endpoint that we're adding. And this is the YAML file. So the YAML file for GitLab has two parts. It has a staging part and a production part. The staging part has two jobs, a deploy stage job and a test stage job. So there are all of the jobs for staging. And there is the handler and our JSON and our README. And so let's deploy this to GitLab. So we pushed that branch to GitLab. So if we go to GitLab, and let's do a merge request. So we'll do a new merge request, and here is the branch we just pushed. We're going to merge that into the dev branch. And so we'll review the changes. And you can see we added that endpoint and we added that. So that looks good. So let's submit the merge request. And we do merge. And we merged it. So at that point, so let's look at the pipeline. So we shouldn't see any action because the dev branch is not associated with any sort of CI/CD process. It's not associated with an environment, so you're not going to see anything on the pipelines view in GitLab. However, so let's create a new merge request. We will merge the stage branch. We will merge the dev branch into staging. And so we'll do a comparison here. So let's see. So yeah, that looks good. That looks good. So if we submit this merge request, everybody on the team approves it, so it gets a thumbs up, and we start the merge. And as you can see, the runner on my box has picked that up. So if we go to our pipelines view here, we'll see the runner on my computer has detected that change and is starting the deployment process. So we are running, and you can see that previous deployments take about like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes to deploy. So I will pause the video and I will show you what happens. Okay, our staging job is done. So if we click into here, we can see the results. So if we click into this job, we can see the output of the console, and we have 2 endpoints here. We have our hello world endpoint. So if we take that and put that in our web browser, so this should take, this might take a little while because it's going to build the container for the first time. And so this is a cold start. So there we go. We see a hello world from staging. That's what we should see. And if we copy this endpoint, put that in there, and we'll see there are our trucks, truck IDs. So that is working correctly. So that is the deployment from dev to staging. So let's do a push to production. So we will create a new merge request. We will go from stage to master, and we'll submit that merge. And we'll say merge. And I will pause the video and show you the results. Okay, our push to production went well. Let's take a look at the output of the console. Oops. And so let's look at our hello world endpoint from production. We'll execute that, and it says hello world from production. So we know we are in the production environment. And if we execute this trucks endpoint, it should be the same as staging, because that's just hard-coded data. So cool. So that's working correctly. So let's take a tour of Lambda for a second. All the stuff in Lambda. So these are our serverless functions, our Lambda functions that we have for this project. So there is our staging API, and here for the trucks, and here is the production API for trucks. And we have some warm-up functions here and our hello world functions. So this is what Lambda looks like. The API gateway, we have a prod serverless gateway project here, and we have the staging project here. So here's our production environment, our staging environment for the actual API, and here are our endpoints. This is the S3 bucket where we have our configuration files. So we have a configuration file for production and a configuration file for staging stored in the SLS config bucket. This is our CloudFormation stacks. So we have a stack for production, and we have a CloudFormation stack for staging. And this is what I was talking about a little earlier. Sometimes these things can essentially stall on you, and you are pretty much at the mercy of CloudFormation when this stalls. You really can't do anything. You can't even delete your stack and start over again. You just have to wait for it. Like I said earlier, this is a really simple example. 2 public subnets. These are our 2 subnets. Nothing special there. They're very small, very easy. And here is our route table, which has the internet gateway associated with it. So very simple. Good stuff.